Welcome to your Essential Business Briefing. I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up, after the collapse of several global retail brands, how long will the nightmare on Main Street last? Is during a pandemic a good time to go to business school? We'll speak to the head of France's top-ranked institution, HEC. Plus, unmasked, the French manufacturers who say they're struggling to compete in the market for face coverings. The coronavirus pandemic is rewriting the rules for retail as more people shop online. In many countries, non-essential businesses were forced to close for months this year. They're now struggling to stay afloat. A number of global brands have collapsed, notably in the fashion sector, while others have slashed their workforces. In the UK alone, more than 230,000 retail jobs are set to be lost this year. Kate Moody's here with more on this story. Kate, walk us through some of the big names who've declared bankruptcy this year.
Well, Stephen, there are enough of them that some analysts are calling this retail apocalypse 2020. In the United States, several major department store chains have gone bust, including Neiman Marcus, Lord & Taylor and J.C. Penney's. Dozens of high street staples like J. Crew and Brooks Brothers have failed as well. In the UK, Debenhams, one of the oldest department stores in the country, and the Arcadia Group, which owns brands including Topshop, Miss Selfridge and Dorothy Perkins, have collapsed. Some French fashion chains have joined them. Some of these retailers are still looking for buyers, but others will disappear altogether.
This isn't all down to the pandemic, though. Some of these brands were struggling beforehand.
Yeah, online retailers have been making steady gains against brick and mortar stores over the last decade or so. Sales at American department stores, for example, peaked 20 years ago. They've been steadily declining ever since. And that's part of a broader shift in consumer trends. Even before the pandemic, some retailers had been trying to turn their physical stores into showrooms that offer more personalized or niche services, pop-up stands or branded experiences. For other retailers, the cost of this year's lockdowns and the drop in spending, especially from tourists, were just the final straw.
So what does the future look like for the retailers that are still operating?
Well, in the short term, this end-of-year shopping season is going to be crucial. The Black Friday sales offer some clues. While foot traffic in U.S. stores was down by nearly half, as you can see here, online spending jumped around 20% to new record highs over that crucial weekend. Online and in-person spending in the UK for that same period was down around 10% from last year. Now, e-commerce may help to save a brand, but not stores themselves. Urban planners say the string of retail failures could lead to a different problem entirely of empty town centres.
Kate Moody, thank you very much. Now, the pandemic has forced many people to make big career changes this year. Demand for places in business schools is said to be buoyant despite the global recession. France has dominated this year's Financial Times ranking of European business schools, with 4 French institutions making the top 10. And HEC Paris, just south of the French capital, came out on top of that list. Let's speak to Eloïque Perrache, who's the interim dean there. Eloïque, thanks for being with us. Can you give us an idea of how HEC has adapted to the pandemic? What's different there this year?
Well, clearly, we have students on campus. We are a residential campus. So we have students on campus, but many students eventually went back home. And the idea is that you need to offer classes remotely. We very often hear that faculty members will be conservative. Well, they're not. I mean, they've been super innovative since last March. In 2 days, they passed from full face-to-face to full remote classes. In September, they went for the hybrid system, where part of the audience is in class and the other is following remotely. We went back to full online classes, and I'm sure tomorrow we'll have new innovation. So we had to innovate a lot in terms of modes of delivery. And then we had to manage a campus where we had students living here, even though they have to follow classes online.
Has there been any impact on the institution's finances as a result of this?
We had an increase in the number of candidates in September, which is totally unique in the history of HEC. It's hard to explain. I guess that it's because HEC is a very renowned school globally, but we had double-digit growth in the number of candidates, and even it went up to 50% in some programs. So in terms of degree programs, we've been very attractive. Now, because of the lockdown, the executive education part is more complicated to deliver. So in terms of contact with company, on open program or custom program, we had issues delivering the program face-to-face. But on the other hand, we have programs that are offered fully digitally. We have students all over the world, participants all over the world, attending the program by staying home. And there too, the number of candidates, of course, increased a lot. So globally, of course, the performance is not as the one we had in 2019, but we managed to attract many students in our degree programs full-time.
And that's both your current and your sort of future enrollment, because obviously you have an entrance point at several times in the year. So your future prospects, people are interested.
So most of the enrollment is in September. For the MBA, we have another one in January, and they will stay 16 months. So when we talk about degree programs, it's mostly in September. For the executive education, of course, it's all over the year.
I wonder, with so many students being taught remotely, although you do have people on campus, one of the big attractions of business school is networking. How do you roll out networking for students that aren't necessarily seeing each other face to face?
Well, we have roughly half of the students who stayed on campus. So they connect with each other. They have many clubs and things going on campus. But of course, most of the networking and the coaching and the connections with company is now done online. And, maybe surprisingly, we can do very interesting things online too on this issue.
It's not cheap doing an MBA anywhere. It's 74,000 euros for an MBA at HEC. Can you still justify charging those fees if people aren't getting face-to-face contact?
I think the quality of the classes, and we monitor that very often, is at least as good as we had face-to-face. So we had the same classes, the same faculty, and it's all synchronous and mostly synchronous. So on that side, it went very well. Now, the issue is that you live on campus, you want to have some activity, you practice sports, have clubs, eventually work on setting on your own company. That issue, it might be a little bit more difficult. So the idea was, how can we bring more value and give additional access to things that we don't offer on a regular basis? And that's how we try to solve that situation.
It's a big endeavor for a lot of people to do an MBA. It involves taking time out of their career. How, in this situation that the world is currently in, how do you encourage people to come to business school at this point?
Well, I think it's always good to do an MBA or to do a master degree. It's a different time in your career, but many people say that the MBA is on a downward sloping curve globally in the world. It's absolutely not the case at HEC. We have growing numbers of candidates every year, and it has been the case last September. It's always the case also in January. So we have more and more people coming. And the idea is that very often we say that MBA might be contracyclical. So when the economy is down, people want to go in the MBA. We don't really see that here. Even when the economy is going well, we have students that are candidates to our MBA. So taking some time off, spending some time to think about your own career, learn a lot, connect with people from all over the world and structure a global network is something which is important. Now, we have very competitive advantage at HEC in terms of the quality of our faculty, on the ability to set up companies. Entrepreneurship is in the DNA of the school. So I think people come for different reasons, and they believe that's the right time to come.
Okay, HEC Paris from HEC Paris, thank you very much for joining us. Now, at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, France, along with other countries, faced a shortage of face masks. Manufacturers responded to a government call to increase production, either with new facilities or by transforming existing businesses. It hasn't been a simple transition for many, though, as Claire Rush now reports.
Before the outbreak of the coronavirus, this manufacturer in the French Alps mostly produced parts for the automobile industry. But now it's converted part of its production line to making surgical masks. Back in March, when France faced an acute shortage of masks, the manufacturer decided to diversify its production, investing 10 million euros to do so, including 2 million in government subsidies.
We decided to buy the machines and transport them here quickly so as to install them for industrial production.
To boost production capacity, the company hired 160 new employees. It now makes 10 million masks a week.
During the first lockdown, everything was closed, including businesses. This was the only one in operation, so it was a good opportunity for me.
There are now some 20 factories producing surgical masks in France, including this site outside Paris. Some companies, however, worry that their business model is not viable in the long term.
Once the pandemic is over, demand is going to collapse. The new companies that have been launched will struggle to make it.
The biggest competition for French manufacturers comes from China. Masks made in China sell for 20 cents on average, half the price of a mask made in France.
We need to take a broader look at the European and French industrial sectors. How can we level the playing field?
One proposal for countering Chinese competition being discussed at the EU level is an import tax based on carbon emissions during production.
Carbon has a cost. This cost should be paid by all those operating in the market.
The government's goal: produce 100 million masks per week in December.
That's it from us for this week, but you can watch back all of our previous episodes on our website, france24.com. And we're on social media for your comments and questions. Until next time, thanks for watching.
Worldviews. France 24 brings you all the news from hotspots around the world. In Asia, the Middle East, the Americas, Africa and France. From Europe to Oceania, take a daily trip across borders to keep abreast of all the latest international news. Get exclusive updates from our correspondents around the globe. Our daily reports will take you to all four corners of the world. Every day, watch World Views on France 24 and France24.com.